Hi, everyone. Welcome to Waste 360's Nothing Wasted podcast. On every episode, we invite the most interesting people in waste, recycling, and organics to sit down with us and chat candidly about their thoughts, their work, this unique industry, and so much more. So thanks for listening and enjoy this episode. Hi, everyone. This is Liz Bothwell from Waste 360, and I'm with Daniel Silverstein, designer and owner of Zero Waste Daniel. Welcome, Daniel, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So we normally start at the beginning on this show, and I'd love to hear more about your background and how you found your passion for sustainability.
My background is really in design. I studied fashion design at the Fashion Institute of Technology. I specialized in women's sportswear, which actually is not like sports, like activewear, but sportswear as in day-to-day wear. And I had a concentration in tailoring, and I spent some time studying abroad in Italy, where I learned a more global perspective on fashion and sourcing and how the world approaches wearing clothes, which was really interesting. I also grew up in Pennsylvania, where, my parents were sort of the leaders of a recycling house. It wasn't any major effort towards conservation, but it was certainly a mindful place where we made sure to sort our bottles and cans and things. And as I grew into adulthood and studied more and more about my passion for making clothing and textiles and the craft of design, I saw firsthand a fundamental lack of circularity in the process, and I felt like someone had to be doing something about it.
Definitely, and wow, have you done that? I just love the way that you are living your life and your business. So tell me, because I know you do this personally and professionally, what does living zero waste mean to you? And then after that, if you could just tell me, what does that mean in your business exactly?
Sure. Living zero waste, in my mind, is less of a rule book and more of a practice. I liken it oftentimes to something like yoga, where the more you practice it, the stronger you get at it, and the deeper you get into it, the more you'll learn. But it's something that anyone, even at a beginner level, can practice and participate in. It's certainly not about perfection or performance. It's really about connecting with something. So going with that yoga metaphor, every yoga class I've ever taken has been all about connecting with your breath and honoring where you are in your practice. Maybe your shoulder hurts and you want to do something to stretch it or rest it. Maybe you're feeling really strong and you want to try a headstand that day. So with zero waste, there are little things that I like to connect with. It's my personal belief that nothing needs to be wasted. Waste is a design flaw, but I can't control everything around me. So on days when I'm feeling really strong, I try new things. I make things from scratch, or I go out of my way to recycle something that's hard to recycle. And on days when I'm not feeling as strong, I maybe just collect things in a trash bin in my house and let them go, because that is where I'm at that day. In my business, it's a really different approach towards materials and sourcing specifically. I feel really connected to the idea of potential, and I want to make sure that I'm never taking on more than I can really store and use, but I see so much potential in the materials that come through my studio, from big bolts of fabric to thread scraps. There's only waste if we choose to see it as waste. So I'm constantly innovating on new textile designs and ways of joining fabrics together of all different sizes to create new marketable, wearable pieces that can turn what some people see as waste into beautiful, wearable fashion. My main goal with my work is to take these pieces that the industry at large sees as unusable, and oftentimes take the smallest and most insignificant pieces and turn them into my most valuable and precious works of art.
That's amazing, and I applaud you because, fashion is normally so waste and resource intensive, so you're really attacking this on a holistic level, and I love it.
I'm trying to. One of my main materials is what I call hard-to-recycle fabrics. Any fabric that has man-made additives like lycra and spandex blended into it can't be broken down with traditional textile recycling like shredding. So it's really important to find a different end of life for those scraps other than the landfill. And so I'm constantly racking my brain and asking, is it more sustainable to be using what we have or developing a more sustainable future? And the answer is it's a little bit of both. There needs to be more of a demand for these more organic and environmentally friendly practices, but also there needs to be a better choice for end of life for these hard to recycle materials.
Absolutely. And I know our industry is researching that and thinking very hard about that because it's just what we all need to do right now to get to where we need to go, considering how much of the textile waste does go to landfills today.
Yeah. So being someone who's inspired by the idea of potential, I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for aspiring entrepreneurs of all kinds. Yes, in the fashion space, but also in the recycling space, but also in the farming space, in the chemical space, in all of these different areas that right now are a little bit siloed, and we hope that in the future we'll start to work together more.
Definitely. And I think that's what's great about bringing this conversation forward, because until we're all at the table, we're not going to find those sustainable solutions, right?
That is the goal, start talking in a more interdisciplinary way. And when I started Zero Waste Daniel, I had already been creating fashion with a zero waste concept for about 5 years. But this line of sweatshirts and joggers and hoodies was really about inviting more people to the table. It wasn't just for people who were interested in fashion. It was for anyone who wears clothes. I don't know anyone, even people who love fashion, who don't wear hoodies. Everyone wears hoodies. So it's about opening up the conversation to people who don't necessarily think of themselves as interested in fashion or style, but who can share in our demand for resources and clothes.
Absolutely. And that leads me to what I found fantastic, something that you said, is how you embrace Copycats, because it helps that more people come to the table and more people think about sustainable fashion. Can you tell me a little bit about your thought there?
Yeah, in many aspects of my life, whether it's the zero waste approach to fashion or zero waste approach to life, there are a lot of people making a lot of noise on the internet, Instagram, blogs, and what I always try and remind people is that sustainability is not a talent. It's something that we should all be entitled to. We want to live on a healthy planet and embrace each other in a harmonious way. So the idea that I should be the only designer doing a zero waste practice is insane. What I would encourage anyone who's inspired by this concept to do is make it their own. What is your special way of expressing yourself, the way you see materials, the way you see color, that makes your line your line? Because anyone can go to Canal Street and get that Louis Vuitton knockoff, but it's a knockoff. What's so exciting is when a new designer makes a new bag, like Telfar, that everybody wants. So I think, handbags are handbags, hoodies are hoodies, but how do you make your line you? And for aspiring designers, I say, I'm already doing the style I'm doing, and no one in business needs more competition. So how do you take that and then innovate on it? I think that's something that's really missing from the fashion industry. People are very secretive about their resources and their contractors and production facilities. And I think that a more cooperative approach towards production would be really beneficial for a more sustainable future.
Absolutely. And I feel like you hit the nail on the head, and you've done collaboration. So How did your ThreadUp collab come about?
The ThreadUp collab came about super organically. It was just one of those things where I guess they knew they were trying to upcycle some hard-to-recycle materials, and they did a little research on who's working with that kind of stuff and reached out, and it fit so naturally. And it's a funny thing because there's the natural fit of, wow, I'd be a great partner, and then the natural fit of, hey, isn't that model on your website someone I went to college with, and how do you know them? And it turns out that we're all so much more connected than we think we are. So there were personal ties and connections as well as a seamless fit into just making it happen. Another thing that we really thought about in that collaboration was that I don't often work with post-consumer waste. A lot of times I work with what I call pre-consumer post-production waste. So after a factory has cut and sewn something, or after designers have made their samples, but before that fabric has been washed or worn. So those are like just little leftovers from production. With ThreadUp, we actually worked with post-consumer waste. So old clothing that was actually in condition that deemed it no longer saleable. So maybe something was ripped, or a button was missing, or there was a big stain on part of the garment. And what we did was we deconstructed those garments and used the textiles to make new things. And we actually brought in another resource to think about our scraps from that and what we were going to do. And we partnered with Fab Scrap, an amazing textile recycling organization here in Brooklyn that took on the waste of our waste and then had that recycled, which was really cool.
Oh, that's so cool. And are you still working with Fab Scrap now?
I work with Fab Scrap constantly. I am an early adopter of that concept and a huge supporter of that business. And I, have been to Fab Scrap at least once a quarter since I can remember. So I love that business. I'm constantly so impressed with all of the different barriers they're breaking down, their nonprofit approach towards recycling, their data collection, the way that they have envisioned everything, and not to mention the fact that it is two really impressive female entrepreneurs leading the team and doing this really sort of gritty, heavy lifting, which I think is pretty badass.
That is badass. I think that's awesome. So great. And I love that you found them and that you're working with them regularly. I mean, it's what they're doing is amazing. And I'll put a link for our listeners so they can learn more about them as well. And then I read about a standout piece that you did, and this will intrigue our listeners for sure. And it was a bright orange coat designed from the remnants from the New York City Department of Sanitation. I'd love to hear more about that and love to see that as well.
Yeah, I have one left in my personal closet, but it was a limited edition collection made from upcycled materials from the Department of Sanitation. I think what some people don't realize is that with a giant New York City team of sanitation workers, from administrators to actual garbage collectors to the people who fix the trucks, there's a lot going on in just that one department that is so crucial to the way we live here. And the New York City Department of Sanitation Foundation for New York Strongest, which is their in-house foundation that supports the sanitation workers when they have needs, reached out about collaborating. And what we found was that whether it's tents from a collection site that are now, weathered and worn and needs to be upcycled, or a few extra T-shirts left over from their uniforms that now have, misinformation printed on them, or, the color scheme of the department has changed or something, whatever those couple of odds and ends and leftover materials, all the way down to something called lug nut indicators that are meant to fall off the truck to let you know that the lug nuts on the wheels need to be tightened. Those things are all different takes on waste that we don't normally think about. Normally we just think about, I open my string cheese and throw away the wrapper. But what about all those weird odds and ends? And so I designed a collection out of those pieces And really the standout and feature piece of that was a coat made from the tent that the New York City Department of Sanitation was using as a site for information and collection and at different events. And once their program ended and the tents had been used and used and used and the edges were starting to wear and all of those things, the centers of them still had these incredible logos and really great graphics and really interesting information. And so I cut them apart and pieced them back together to make these coats. And what I think is so interesting is that, we see a tent, we think waterproof, we think sunproof, we think all of those things, but we don't necessarily think that would be great for a coat also, because I want my coat to have all of those properties. So what I did was I took the tents that there were and I cut them up and I made as many coats as possible, and we created this limited run. And what I love to do with these types of collaborations and materials is make things that feel evergreen. It's not trend driven, it's not seasonal, it's just a piece that you can love and have in your wardrobe, and to do something that feels a little out there, a little special, but also feels like an investment piece. I know for anyone shopping, whether you're buying a big major brand or just a staple piece you always want to have in your wardrobe, shelling out that cash that you work so hard for to buy something is hard. You're parting with that money. So what are you getting in exchange for it? And I never want Zero Waste Annual customers to feel like they're getting something that's going to go out of style.
I love that. And you can certainly see that in your collections and even in your Instagram posts and stories. I love that. What a great way to do this.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that, the approach that the industry kind of takes and then pushes on us is to saturate the market with trends and then force things out of style so that you want to buy new things. And that is proving to be sort of a bubble that's bursting. And I think the new approach is going to be to own things and love them for a long time, which is sort of the way our grandparents and great-grandparents and their parents were doing things for a long time. So going back to that way of treating our wardrobe and our clothes and our, visual communication as self-expression, your style, your look is supposed to be something that's enduring. And at this point, we want people to buy new things. We want to upcycle and make a living and sell, a lot of pieces, but at what cost? And so looking for innovative new materials, looking for potential in materials that are being cast aside, and then turning them into things that can last a lifetime is really the goal.
I love it. You're so creative. Where do you find your inspiration?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, I'm definitely the kid who is staring at the clouds looking for shapes. And so I find a lot of inspiration just in the materials themselves. I see a small piece of something and I can't stop myself from wondering, is that the iris of an eye? Is that the stamen of a flower? Is it the root of a plant? It could be so many things. And I love looking for shapes and things, but I also find a lot of creativity and optimism. I just think that getting bogged down by the negative thoughts isn't helping. So even if it's just sewing a couple of scraps together, making that physical change, adding time and energy to those materials to create something is so much power. And I feel like I have that power inside of me. We all have that power inside of us. Even just adding flour and water together, you're making change and turning something into something else. And so especially when I'm feeling like I'm not inspired or I don't know where to start or I'm missing some spark of creativity on any given day, I usually just start drawing or just start sewing and seeing what comes out, because there's something really electrifying and energizing about making change.
Absolutely. And I love the way that you describe that, because I think you do share optimism, and I think it is a gift, and it is, especially with the pandemic, it's really great to see people who are innovating during it. And that, yes, some days are hard, but it's really perception as well, isn't it? And it's how we tackle the day.
Yeah, I think perception is all of it, because I think, from the inside out, all of my days are hard and all of my days are blessed. So it's just how you choose to frame it, and, what you use as your comparison. We can't say that our problems aren't real or that are not our problems, but if you've got a roof over your head and food in the cupboard, then you're doing a lot better than a lot of people. And that's something to be really grateful for. And I think in this, 2021 COVID Insta world, it's really easy to get bogged down by, I want more followers, I want to go out, I want more money, I want these things. But I think that we really should all take this opportunity to look at the simple things in our lives as huge wins. If you've got your health, if you've got your future ahead of you, you're doing amazing right now.
Exactly. I love that. And so, we're talking about COVID-19 right now. How did that affect your business?
COVID-19 has been just the weirdest, most unexpected experience for me and this business. I'm an optimist, as we were talking about, and so I really look for the silver lining in everything, and it can be really hard to see. This year has been transformative in a lot of different ways. I found myself closing my store, which I didn't think was going to happen, but here we are. And I found myself closing it for really unexpected reasons. I thought that it was, the shutdown, how will we reopen? But as COVID sort of unfolded, what it really gave way to was an opportunity to sort of get off my own hamster wheel. I was going to be shutting down for 2 weeks, and once I was shut down for 2 weeks, I was able to look at everything in my life differently. Do I need to have this store open? And I shift my focus elsewhere. What am I going to be doing with my time? Our plan became to, kind of cut our overhead and see what happens and ride things out for a couple of weeks. And as weeks turned into months, growing our production and our business back to where it was when we shut down was a challenge, because most of New York's garment industry is at a third of its capacity at best. And so our normal production channels are not what they were. And I relish the opportunity to sit in front of the sewing machine and make things myself, but I can only make so many things a day. And if I'm going to be our main production, I can't have the store open to the public, because if someone comes in and I catch COVID, or if people come in and I spread COVID, then my whole business is going to go under. So it became this moment where I really had to start looking critically at what's the most important thing. How do I do more of what's important and do less of what I don't need to be doing? And I found myself in this work from home situation that so many people have, and I found it really working for me. I found more time to focus on updating my website, developing new designs, working on my social media posts, and we've really hit a new groove that I'm thoroughly enjoying. The downside of it is that to get from A to B was like walking through a gauntlet. As our production shut down and different, facilities we weren't able to get there, we weren't able to travel, they weren't able to take the capacity, buildings were padlocked, people were ill, as all of these things were happening, we basically sat in our studio and sewed everything ourselves, packed everything ourselves, and shipped everything ourselves. And when I say that, it was just me and my husband, Mario. We really made almost everything. We worked with a couple of contractors who were able to work from home and safely social distance. And other than that, I sewed like 600 garments or something in COVID. And I just didn't see myself doing that. I thought that, at this point, I've built a little bit of a brand and a name for myself, and I think I can have things only produced by other people at this point. But I'm realizing as I grow in my business that, things always come back to the beginning. It's that full 360 cycle happens all the time. And I started this way. I've made many projects and rounds of production on my own before, and I think it's something that for many different reasons will happen again in my life. And so, feeling blessed but also stressed was a very real thing for me during COVID-19. I felt personally very fortunate to have my health and the ability to make those pieces, because that meant that I was able to keep my business going and not have to suffer in so many different ways that other people are. So it was really, talk about practicing what you preach. It was really having some very hard days and really looking for ways to be thankful for them.
Oh, definitely. Wow. And you really lived that small business. How are you coping? And I mean, wow, what a story. That's amazing.
I think a lot of people can really relate to it. And what I want anyone listening to understand is that just because things seem to be going amazing for a designer or a brand or an entrepreneur or a business, it doesn't mean it's easy. It's just happening. And it's happening because you don't let it stop happening. And so on those really stressful days, it's still happening because we fought for it and we, sat and put the pedal to the metal and did it ourselves. So there's a lot of pride that comes along with that, but it's also very humbling because as the business grows, it reconnects me to the kind of work that we have other people doing, helping us grow our business. And I love to be an entrepreneur who can say, I never have someone do something that I wouldn't do myself. And I make these garments. I know how to make them. I make them from scratch. If you buy from zerowastedaniel.com, you actually are getting maybe a 30% chance that I physically sewed the garment that you're receiving. And if I didn't sew the whole thing, there's pretty much a 100% chance I sewed part of it. And I love putting that kind of energy into each one of the pieces. I think that, I'm a big energy person. I think that people can feel the love. It's like when, your grandma cooks cookies or something, you can taste the love. I feel like I love this work so much, you can feel it when you put on the garments.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. And another thing that I think you've done a great job with is just showing people who you are, and you saw that the need to do that. And I don't know if it was because of that's just who you are, or the fact that you knew showing your prospective customers and larger audience that they needed to see how to live a zero waste life and or build a zero waste fashion business. But I think that's a huge part of your success. Was that something that just came to you one day? Tell me about that.
I had a really interesting experience after about 5 years of creating cocktail and evening dresses and selling them on different wholesale platforms through boutiques and, online, and doing the whole sort of fashion circuit. I was doing the trade shows at the Javits Center and working with a showroom and models and, just sort of doing it, quote unquote, the way you're supposed to. I found that I was not being myself and that my values didn't matter inside that system. And after making a very difficult and painful decision to close down that business, in the process of doing that, I ended up taking the scraps that I had collected over the first 5 years of experimenting with zero waste and turning them into a sweatshirt for myself. I posted that sweatshirt on my Instagram and instantly got about double the engagement that I had ever gotten on a post, posting all of the things I thought I was supposed to be posting. And what I learned from that experience was that it's not engaging for people to follow someone's accomplishments it's engaging to be able to relate to someone. That's what social media is for. That's what we look for as humans in each other. We're looking for meaningful and deep connections. And in that moment, I learned that I needed to be shifting the way I communicated with people away from what I thought I should be doing and into what I wanted for myself. I want a sweatshirt, so I made one. I want to do this collaboration, so I'm making it happen. I want to have a store. Please come to it. I want these things, and I want to take you on this journey with me became my main way of communicating versus look what I did, look what I did, look what I did. And that really just opened up a whole world for me where I realized that not only could I communicate with people in a genuine and authentic way, but I could really get behind my own values and go to bat for them. And people were here for it. You know, I think something we have all seen through different social media channels is the trolls and the haters and the doubters and all of that. And I have to say, on Zero Waste Annual, there's almost none of that, because the way we go about communicating is just really authentic. We show you what we're making. I show you what I'm doing. I talk to people directly. And it's more than that. It's even in the DMs on the customer service. You know, if someone has a question or a doubt, I'm often sending them a personal video message saying, hey, it's me. This is what I think. Hey, it's me. It's not a bot. I'm a real person, and I will send you your XYZ. It's just stuck in production right now. And I think that that kind of transparency is something that no marketing plan can create for someone. It's just something you have to have. And it's something that anyone can have if they're willing to be authentic and truthful.
Absolutely. And that shines through in what you do. And also you're very honest too. And it's the real deal. Like, for example, what you were saying before about how you liken living zero waste and living a sustainable life is, it's like yoga. It's a practice. So you're not going to have naysayers waiting for you to make a mistake at the store in your business, because they know that you say, well, the next day, get up and try it again. So I just think that honesty really comes through. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I am not a perfect person. I'm not a perfect zero waste person. And especially, we moved studios. There have been so many times in the last year where I've just said, I don't know what to do with this thing. This is waste that came into my life. But there are so many times when I have the opportunity to avoid making more waste. So that's really what I look for, is things that I can control, and I make my best effort. And the reason that I'm so honest is because doing the wrong thing keeps me up at night, and it's something that I feel like I need to be honest about. It's not a selling point that I am more perfect than anyone else. I think the selling point is that I really have these bags of scraps and I'm really trying to use them all. And I'm honest about that, and people say, what do you do with your thread scraps? What do you do with the lint? What do you do with this? What do you do with that? And a lot of times the answer is, I don't know, but you need a lot of something before you can sell any quantity of it. So oftentimes I'm just amassing a material until I have enough of it to produce something. And that's okay too. You have to be careful about how much you're willing to collect. I think anyone in waste management and upcycling dabbles with that fear, like, am I a hoarder? How much of this can I hang on to before it's crazy? But at some point, you have to say, this is my art, this is my business, this is my process, and I'm just collecting right now. And then once you see that pile of thread scraps, weird pieces that are left over, or whatever it is, and you feel inspired to make something with it, that's when you start.
That's fantastic. And like you said, it is a process, and there's creativity behind it. There's a ton of thought. So it always turns into something good.
It has to, and I tell a lot of people who ask, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? You don't have to have an answer for everything. Sometimes the answer is, can you find someone who wants it? And that can be enough, snap a photo of what's left over, throw it on a Craigslist ad or on a Facebook marketplace, and hey, I'm getting rid of this thing. Does anybody want it? That's a great way to get rid of stuff. You don't have to be the most zero waste person in the world to live totally zero waste. You can just think about things differently. It's that simple.
Definitely. I agree with that. And then you started a series called Sustainable Fashion is Hilarious. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. That's such a good question. So Sustainable Fashion is Hilarious is my answer to the fashion show. Fashion shows are something that I got an insane amount of pleasure from growing up. I love them. They're, the supermodels of the world and the drama of seeing clothing walking down a runway and the wind that's created. And it's just something that really speaks to me. But from my personal experience, fashion shows have been some of the most stressful and wasteful things that I've ever gone through. Making samples that are never going to be worn, perpetuating unrealistic standards of beauty, spending tons of money just to basically have like a birthday party for your clothes. It's a very weird proposition to feel like you have to have a fashion show. It's also something that I think puts a lot of emphasis on the work, but doesn't really let you speak about the work. And of course, there's something to be said for work speaking for itself. But, if you hire a model who you don't really know that well because you think they look great in the clothes, and then they don't do exactly what you had in mind on the runway, that's how your clothes get seen. That's it, And I think in the Insta world, when people are hiring Gigi and Bella so that people will look at the collection, nothing wrong with Gigi and Bella, but I can't afford them. So that's certainly not what's going to be plugging my line. And after years and years and years of trying to keep up with that rat race of doing fashion shows, and at the end of every season being all I have left is some pictures and a lot of bills, I don't know why I would do this one more time. And I was running the store. I was working in the store every day. I'm meeting with customers. And on a regular basis, people would say, oh, that's so funny. You should do stand-up. Oh, my God, that's so funny. You could put that in an act. You're hilarious. And I just thought to myself, I have stuff to say. And I enjoy the witty repartee that goes along with a lot of these questions and conversations about sustainability. And one season, a venue reached out and said, hey, we're looking for something to do for Fashion Week. We're a sustainable venue. We'd love to have you and do a fashion show. Would you be interested? And I was like, absolutely not. Thank you so much. And they were like, well, what would you want to do? We really want to work with you. And I said, well, got a mic? Because I have some stuff I'd like to say. And like that, Sustainable Fashion is Hilarious was born. It was a one-night engagement during Fashion Week, a 45-minute stand-up comedy act where I did impressions of Tim Gunn and Heidi Klum and talked about how everyone I've ever met has told me I should go on Project Runway as if it's some kind of ride that you can stand in line for and go on. And we talked about all the different ways that going grocery shopping can make you sad and all of the just silly things inside of sustainability that I think people who are interested in fashion, people who are interested in the environment all can really relate to. And what I didn't expect was that people really laughed, people really bought tickets, and we ended up doing it again and again. And as of last year, because of COVID, I turned it into something digital. So I put out my first digital episode of Sustainable Fashion is Hilarious last season during Fashion Week. And it's actually something you can buy a ticket to and stream right on my website. And much like my collection, my intention was to make this more evergreen than a fashion show. So you're definitely seeing a lot of clothing, but it also is kind of just like a conversation with me, where I get to talk about what I'm thinking and feeling and what's going on. And if you missed one of the first ones, you might want to check that out. And if you like the first episode on my website, I'm working on more that will come out on no timeline, but when they're ready.
Oh, this is great. Okay, I will definitely check this out. I can't wait.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's fun. It's a little bit different, and it's, I think that any entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur can relate to the epidemic of you should. And, people tell you, you should do this, you should do that. And one of the shoulds that I got a lot was, you should have a YouTube channel. And I don't have a YouTube channel, really. I'm not really a YouTuber, but this is the kind of thing that I think, sort of answers that you should. So if I had a YouTube channel, this is what I'd put on there.
Perfect. Fantastic. And so, Daniel, you were really ahead of your time. I mean, with pursuing sustainable fashion in general, and then everything that you've rolled out since. Do you think that the drive toward a more sustainable fashion industry is real right now, and it's not greenwashing? Do you think it's hit a tipping point?
I think the only part of it that hasn't hit the tipping point is the actual industry. I think that the consumer is ready to tip the scales, and what we're seeing more and more in the annual reports that come out, the trend reports, but also the financial reports, show that consumers are ready for sustainable goods, and that market share is being diverted away from larger and larger brands and into one-of-a-kind handmade goods. We're seeing all of these incredible, inspiring designers come up on platforms like Instagram and TikTok. We're seeing all kinds of exciting personalities that are emerging as part of the makers revolution. And so I think that the consumer is really ready. I don't think the industry is quite caught up yet, but I don't know that they'll catch up in time. I think that this new industry is sort of burgeoning in a very exciting way. I tried to explain this to someone last year. I was very affected by the closing of Barney's. It was just something I couldn't fathom. This New York institution that I aspired to sell to was out of money. How is that possible? And what I explained to a friend of mine, I said, let's just forget about the real numbers for a second. Let's say that 4 small brands, Zero Waste Daniel and 3 other brands, who cares, each made $250,000. That's $1 million. So if 10 small brands do the same, and then 100 small brands do the same, that puts a giant like Barney's out of business. All of that market share is going directly into those people's pockets. And with platforms like Etsy and, all of these ways of communicating directly with makers increase in visibility and popularity, old school ways of doing things shut down. So I think that the consumer is really who's in the driver's seat right now. And, I don't know if the industry will catch up or shut down.
That's such an interesting way to look at it, and so true. And, Barney's hit me hard, and some of the other closings as well. And it's because they are institutions and you do respect them. It's hard to see too, because the writing's on the wall too. So how much can these, big companies really, it's more than a pivot, really change what they're doing. So it'll be interesting to watch, but that's a great perspective. I hadn't thought of it that way, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in personal power, and we've touched on it a little bit. And I think that for listeners, it's important to remember that in every aspect, if you're not the entrepreneur, you can be the consumer, and your consumer dollars change the shape of the global landscape. It just really has that much power. And so, I'm one of those, we have to buy it from a local maker, we have to get it secondhand kind of people. And, probably 95% of the time we're able to. And those consumer dollars add up. So even if it's not something I'm designing or making, it's something I can still contribute to the narrative of changing.
Definitely can. I think that's great. So wow, we've talked about a lot. Tell me, what's next for Zero Waste, Daniel?
You know, there are a couple of things that just keep coming up over and over and over for me. And so I'm looking at some new projects. Sustainable Fashion is Hilarious has really kind of whet my appetite for media. And I'm just so enthralled by that medium. And I think that, you know, it's funny because growing up, we look at things like whether, you know, you're into sports and it's the Olympics or the Super Bowl, or you're into entertainment and it's the Oscars or the Emmys, or you're into fashion and it's the CFDA awards. We look at those people who give out those awards as sort of the tastemakers and gatekeepers and almighty beings. And I'm at this funny point with fashion where I feel like the gatekeepers haven't caught up, and so I'm no longer looking for their approval. And I'm not sure if that means that I'm going to focus my energy outside of the fashion industry or on building something new inside of the fashion industry. But I think that what has happened for me in the last year has been sort of a release of needing to please the powers that be. So I'm feeling very free and very excited to experiment. And I'm really reconnecting with my love of what I call narrative fashion. So pieces that tell a story and that have a deeper meaning than just a shirt or a pair of pants. And I am a huge lover of theater and cinema and performance. And so I think whatever comes next, it's going to have a goal of entertaining whoever sees it.
Oh, that sounds great. Now I'm curious. And how liberating for you to get to that point at such a young age, to just be at a point where you aren't waiting for approval from anyone. That's amazing.
It was really challenging to get there. I think we all want that, you know, whether it's the likes or the prize or the pat on the head, we're all looking for that kind of thing. And it definitely was a challenge to let go of a lot of those traditional metrics of success, but I'm finding myself very inspired by not knowing what I want next.
Oh, and I can't wait to see. I'm going to follow and watch. This is fantastic.
Thank you so much.
And then is there anything else you want to share before I let you go about your busy day?
You know, I think just the main thing to share is that it's about a collective effort and about those small changes, because they really do add up. So for anyone feeling bogged down by the state of the world or the idea of trying to transition their life into a sustainable lifestyle, just don't think about it in such broad terms. Look right in front of you. What's in your hand? What's in your garbage can? What can you stop throwing out so much of or start recycling more? Change one thing. It's that easy, because that one thing over a year adds up. And that's something you can feel really good about. You know, you can't take on the weight of the world's problems. So just one thing that you can change.
Yes, and like you said, it all adds up, just individually and then collectively, and then real change can happen.
That's what I think.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for spending so much time with me today. I loved hearing your story, and I can't wait to get myself a hoodie and share this with our listeners as well.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much for having me and for your thoughtful questions and this great conversation. It's been really inspiring.
Well, thank you. And keep doing what you're doing. You're an inspiration to so many more people than I think you even are aware of.
That's really, really kind of you. And can't stop, won't stop. So don't worry.
Love it. Good. Well, have the great rest of the day. Stay warm, and I'll be in touch soon.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye, Daniel. Thanks.
Bye-bye.